Now we will meet to our next session, technical session 2, which is on PMFME guidelines, FSSA, packaging, DPR, and export perspectives. So to give insight about PMFME guidelines and features, we have with us Dr. R. Mahendran, Associate Professor and Head, Center of Excellence in Non-Thermal Processing, NIFTEM.
Good afternoon, one and all participating in this webinar on fish processing and value addition. Next few minutes, we will be going through the overview of PMFME scheme, particularly how we can able to apply online for getting the benefit of this particular scheme. It has been 1 year over by introducing this PMFME scheme from the Ministry of Food Processing Industry. Largely focused with the objective of supporting the existing unorganized small micro food processing units into the organized sector. The target was given as 2 lakh enterprises bringing into the formally organized framework. This scheme works in the credit-based micro food processing enterprise. And apart from the credit-linked subsidy, this particular scheme also provides a professional and technical support throughout the bringing the unorganized micro units into the organized sector. The scheme features majorly it operates on the one district, one product. Throughout the country, each and every district has been allotted with one particular product. With the outlay of rupees 10,000 crore for the 5 years from 2021 to 2025, the funding pattern for the states 60% from the central government and 40% from the state government. Whereas in the case of Northeast states, Government of India would provide through Ministry of Food Processing Industry as 90%, and the state government of Northeast would provide 10%. Among the total budget, 10% of the total outlay is been earmarked for the Northeast states. This scheme would support for the individual micro food processing units as well as the group units such as farmer producer organization, self-help groups, as well as cooperatives, in order to create a common incubation services to the individual microprocessing units. As I mentioned, major benefit of this scheme is to get the credit-linked subsidy at the rate of 35%, the maximum of 10 lakhs for the individual micro units. And also this would provide the support to groups like self-help groups or farmer producer organizations or cooperatives as initial seed money of rupees 40,000 would be given as a working capital to self-help group members. The major advantage is there may be some micro units would be already existing, but their marketing and branding would be lesser. Maybe locally they would make some fish value-added products, but if they wanted to market and brand it to the other districts or other state or outside country, this scheme would support 50% grant for marketing and branding purposes. And also in order to encourage the common incubation facility or common infrastructure facility, there is a credit-linked grant of 35% will be given. So the pattern of assistance for the individual units, group units, I will inform in the next slide. For the individual units, say for example, if the unit is new, you are going to get this benefit as a new unit, then you need to enter into ODOP permitted for that particular district. Suppose if you are in some particular district, if you are a new micro entrepreneur, you need to get to that particular district's ODOP alone. In case of non-ODOP, the existing units are permitted only for the expansion of the existing unit. So as I mentioned earlier, apart from the subsidy, the major advantage of this particular scheme is handholding support by the district resources like preparation of detailed project report, assisting in getting the bank loan by the district resource person, as well as you would be given a skill and entrepreneurship training if you need it. The training might be in the form of safety guidelines, or in the form of entrepreneurship development, or in the form of technical value-added product oriented skill development training as well. So this particular scheme would also assist you in getting the FSSAI registration, GST, Udyog Aadhaar, as well as every state will have a master trainer. Already master trainers are trained and they are in place, as well as at the district level, district resource person and trainers of trainers also already trained, they are in place. And how to connect with them and how to get their details, everything I'll show you in this next few slides. Whereas in the case of group beneficiaries, the credit linked capital investment grant of 35% will be given for the FPOs or self-help groups or cooperatives. And also in case of suppose a district which has more number of micro units and you wanted to have a common infrastructure facility or common processing facility or common incubation facility like warehouse or storage, cold storage unit or incubation center, this scheme would also provide a credit linked grant of 35%. And even for the group also, if you are making different kind of products and you wanted to market in throughout the country or throughout the world, the marketing and branding subsidy grant 30% or 50% would be given. With respect to administrative architecture, at the district level, the application would be received by the district collectorate through their designated officer. This district collector is the chairman who would select the application and forward it to the state level committee, and which would be sanctioned the project expenditure up to 10 lakh, and then it goes to the national level chaired by the Minister of Food Processing Industry. As I mentioned, in order to assist the beneficiaries at district level as well as at the state level, there are various master level training and district level trainings are already provided, and they are already certified master trainers and district level trainers are available. This training has been given apart from fish and marine product processing, fruits and vegetable processing, grain processing, milk and milk product processing, fat and oilseed processing, minor products produced like honey, mushroom, those kind of product processing also given. Bakery and confectionery, spices and plantation crafts are also given. All this training has been given by the selected national level research and academic institutions who are master in those specific areas. They have trained the master trainer and district level trainer, and they are in place throughout the country. We are given various levels of training, as I mentioned, master trainer. They have been selected by the state nodal agency, and the selected master trainers are trained by the national level apex institutions like NIFTM Tanjavur or NIFTM Kundali. And then the trained master trainer, again, they train the district level trainers, and then the beneficiary training now is going on. So there are states in which the application is processed, and they are getting the benefit from the scheme, as well as they are also getting the training and handholding support throughout the scheme duration. So the major part is maybe you would aware the scheme guidelines or scheme details, but how to apply and where to whom we need to contact for getting the benefit of the scheme. For this purpose, there are two portals. One is MOFPA portal, Ministry of Food Processing Industries portal. Another one is NIFTM Tanjavur portal, formerly Indian Institute of Food Processing Technology, IIFT portal. So first I'll go through the Ministry of Food Processing Industry portal. Bharat, is it visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
Okay. This is a portal pmfme.moip.gov.in. In that, if you are new to this portal, you need to go to this particular sign up page. So wherein if you click it, very few simple questions could be asked, like whether you are an individual applicant or group applicant, like FPOs or SHGs or cooperatives. Or in the case of you want to apply for the common infrastructure, or like the common incubation center or common processing facility, cold storage unit, those things, you need to select common infrastructure application. So in this case, efficient value added product individual applicants, say for example, then the individual has to be selected. Then your name has to be entered, your mobile number, your email ID, and your address. You need to select which state you belongs to. Say for example, Kerala, and what is that particular district. So say for example, you are from Malappuram. So just click it. Individual applicant details, name, email ID, mobile number and address, state and district. Then you register. You will get a username and password. That username and password you need to put it in the here. So individual, that username and password, you submit it. Then it will ask what kind of unit you are proposing. The unit, if it is an existing unit, you wanted to apply for the expansion. What are all the machineries required for expansion? What is the product which you are processing? What is present marketing scenario? And if you are a new entrepreneur getting into the particular product as fresh, then you need to give the details of the land which is available for the making this unit, and what is the product which you are proposing, what is the raw material available, whether the raw material available throughout the all the months, or if it is a seasonal, how you are going to manage those aspects. Simple questionnaires will be there, you need to apply it. And while doing this also, if you need any help, there are a list of details available, like for example, contact details of district resource person. Just I'm opening one such one. So if you could see here, the state wise, like say for example, Andhra Pradesh district, the person's name, the mobile number, the email ID, everything is over given for all the state in the country. Say Karnataka, Kerala, for example. In Kollam district, Dinesh, whose mobile number is given, whose email ID is given, you can free to contact, and it is available free for downloading the details. Similarly, if you wanted to contact the district nodal persons, that details also given over here. So every district, every state, district and state nodal officer, their address, designation, phone number, email IDs, you can free to take, and you can contact them for helping. First, you contact the district resource person. So when you have some idea, or when you have some issue with the expansion or the getting into the business, the district resource person will help you to develop the detailed project report, bankable project report, and he will tell to whom he or she will tell to whom we need to meet in the district level officers, and then it will go to the collector, district administrative officer or collector would take the call for the approval of application, and then it goes to bank for the subsidy release. So this is about the district nodal points. And in case of if you want state nodal agencies, every state has a state nodal agency and a state level technical institute also available. So all those details you will get it over here. Say Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Chandigarh, Delhi, Goa. Every state has the details of the contact person, secondary person, tertiary person. Every contact is given with the mobile number as well. Okay, you can download and you can interact with them and avail the scheme. That is more important. Another website which I mentioned is Nettom Thanjavur portal, wherein you will get all the details about the scheme, the guidelines, scheme guidelines, various revision of the guidelines, everything is being approved. And here also you will get the state level nodal contact points, district contact point, everything is put up over here as well. And if you need training materials and say for example training details you want, every aspect it has been there since it is a fish and marine processing. I am opening that. So in case of fish and marine processing, as I mentioned, national level Premier Institute have conducted the training for the master trainer. Those presentations, those technical details, everything available over this portal. It is free to download for anyone and you can access it. And then that training report, there is a handbook on the fish and marine processing products. So what are the different products which you can able to make, and what are all the safety regulations, what are the entrepreneurs opportunities for the fish product, what are the recent advancements in the packaging of fishery products, what are the regulations are available. All those information you can able to go through in this material. It is available in Niftam Tanjavur portal. Apart from that, you also have the reports based on the already wherever the process is being conducted, how they are doing those reports. Also, you can able to select based on the state in which you are participating. As I mentioned, the common incubation facility also available under this scheme. Say, for example, the model DPR for the fish processing unit already been there. So you can able to check in this DPR what are the machineries required for the fish processing, fish-based value-added products, and what are all the specification those equipments. What is the approximate cost of those units? All this has been put up over there, and you can download and you can able to utilize. And also there is a detailed project reports also available for the fish and marine processing products. You can also access with the Niftam Kundali portal as well as for the detailed project reports. And while applying as an individual units or the group units or for the purpose of marketing and branding, you need to select appropriate application form when you log into the portal. This is all about the brief introduction about the scheme and how we can able to apply under the scheme for getting the benefit of PMFM. Thank you so much for listen.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an informative session. Now, we'll be moving ahead with our next technical session. For next technical session, I would like to invite Dr. C.O. Mohan, sir, Senior Scientist at Fish Processing ICAR Central Institute of Fisheries Technology, Kochi, Kerala. Today, sir will be talking on the packaging and labeling of fisheries products. We welcome you, sir. The session is over to you.
I'll be discussing with you all on the packaging and labeling of fisheries products. So if you see this supply chain, what is happening in our India currently, there are two cases. One is it can be from aquaculture front or from the marine capture. Okay, so from aquaculture, it can be directly purchased from the processing unit. From there it goes to factory and then it is processed and it is either going as an export or domestic market, or it can also be purchased from local buyer and there it goes to local fish market and then it goes to common man. But in the case of marine capture fisheries, what happens? It goes to most of the marine fish which is to be landed. It has to be landed in the landing center. It will have an auction center. From there, different players will be buying. It can be directly common man can buy or local buyer can buy, and then they will take to fish market and common. It can be distributed to common man, or the processing unit persons will buy this one and take to factory and then process and export. That is the normal supply chain which is happening in the India. And fresh fish, you all know that compared to any meat varieties or any food commodity, fish is very highly perishable in nature because of its intrinsic properties. And it has to be, as soon as we take out from the water, it has to be placed on ice because it will lower the temperature and then it will extend the shelf life. So If you preserve the freshness of the fish, then the value for that fresh fish will be tremendous in nature. If you see the same yellowfin tuna, if you are exporting as a what is currently practiced, you will get a price of rupees 525 to almost 625 rupees in the international market for our tuna. Same thing if you are marketing in the domestic market, you get almost less than that. Almost the rate is 360 rupees to 450 rupees. But if you can able to retain the freshness in the form of sashimi grade tuna, then it has almost more than 10 times the value. Per kilo, it will cost almost 6,250 to 6,500 rupees in the international market. That is the value of freshness. We have to, every vendor, every stakeholder has to try to maintain this freshness, then we can increase the value so that we can get better returns for the fishes we are marketing. So if you go to any fish market, you can in the retail markets, you can get fishes in different styles. You can get whole fish itself. There you can take it to home, or they will clean it and remove the gut content and give like this in the form, or it can be gutted and headless form, or it can be fillet form, or it can be steaks form and curry cut forms. So this is mainly these are the different styles of fishes which is given in the market. But this one, it is for the immediate consumption. It will not have a, this you cannot means if you want to preserve also, even if you want to keep it on ice or refrigerator, it will have a very limited shelf life. So it has to be properly processed and preserved, like our previous speaker has highlighted. It has to be preserved so that you can get a very good shelf life. In the case of frozen fish and all, you will get a shelf life of minimum 2 years. In the case of cans, 2 to 3 years you will get. But in the case of just chilled fishes, you may get hardly 7 days to 15 days, depending on the fish varieties. So this is the major fish processing activities which is happening in the industry level. It can be small industry or big industry. So here it happens in minimum 3 stages. One is the raw material or ingredient which are required for the processing, starting from fish itself, and then some of the additives in the case of batter and breaded products, breadcrumbs like that. In the case of pickle and all, salt or vinegar and all, even the salt. Then the packaging material will be there. It can be flexible or paper based or metal or glass container based flexible packaging materials, or rigid packaging materials will be there. This is the input what we are using for the any industry. Then it will go to second stage, wherein this fish or other ingredients will be processed in suitable form. Then it is processed in a particular fashion and hygienically handled, packed and processed. Then it will enter into the retail market, where you can see the final product which are in the attractive packaging materials and all. So many often what happens, we will be more concentrating on the end product. So we will forget about the other ingredients which are mainly playing a crucial role. And one among that is the packaging material, which is also one of the crucial factor in retaining the desirable quality of the product and then extending to the minimum shelf. Suppose if you are planning to process fish in a dried form, the packaging material which we are choosing has to be withstanding this storage conditions like normal room temperature, and then it should not allow any moisture or oxygen from external atmosphere to come inside the packaging. Then otherwise what happens, it will lose its crispiness and it will become moist and all. Similarly, this extruded product similar to Lay's and Kurkure, they should have high barrier film. Similarly, if it is thermally processed product, what we are doing, we are packing the food product, then we are sealing and then processing. So the packaging material, what we are choosing, whether it is a metal container, glass or flexible packaging material, should have the ability to withstand the process condition also, because we will be processing at very high temperature, say 110 degree to 135 degrees centigrade. So these packaging materials should also have the capability to withstand the process condition, and then it also should have a properties, desirable properties, to not allow any moisture or oxygen in contact with the fish, so that we will achieve a desired shelf life. That is one of the important characteristics. So I was meaning to say that packaging plays a crucial role in extending the shelf life and maintaining the desirable quality of the product. Packaging, you all know that it's a external means of preservation of food. That means you are just either wrapping, or putting the packed means products inside a package. So what it does is, this is the functions of a packaging material. It should contain the product, it should give a protection from light, moisture, gases and all, and it should preserve its product's quality. And apart from that, it also should it should act as a silent salesman, means it should be convenient, and it should give a history of its product, from where the fish is caught and where it is processed, from which factory, which location, and then where it is market, means where and all it has traveled, all the history it should give. Then it should give a communication, what it contains, like what is the manufacturing date, expiry date, everything it should give. Then only that will be acceptable by most of the consumers. So for packaging material, it should have 3 P's and 3 R's. 3 P's for protection, preservation and presenting. 3 R's is mainly for the recycling purpose. We have to reduce the usage of this packaging material as much as possible. Whatever if we are using, we have to try to recycle it and then reuse it. That is the main intention of this packaging materials. So packaging, you all know that it's an art and science of encasing the food product to safeguard its desirable quality and safety during the entire supply chain. So I was mentioning, it should preserve by maintaining the quality, and it should present, and it should be having a convenience to it, and then protect during the distribution and processing, as well as it should have a provided storage history. So there are basically 3 types of packaging. One is primary packaging, which directly comes in the contact with the food. So here direct contact will be there. Then secondary packaging, many such primary packed products will be packed in secondary packaging, like carton box and all. And many such secondary packed products will be packed in a pelletized form. It is mainly for transportation and distribution purpose only. So if you see the trend of food packaging in India, it is growing tremendously because of very high increasing disposable income level, rising consumer awareness and demand for processed food, and multinational gains are entering Indian market in many fields like food, beverages and other fields. These are the main reasons why the packaged food consumptions will be increasing. But if you compare with the other countries, India is still consuming very less quantity of packaged food product. It is only hardly around $9 per annum we are spending on packaged food per person. But if you see this American countries and all, it is almost $380 they are spending on consuming packaged food. And similarly, almost $230 European consumers are spending. Even if you compare many of our Asian countries like Taiwan, China and all, they are far ahead of us. They are consuming more of a packed products compared to India. There is a good scope to good scope for increasing the consumption of packed food products in Indian market. So basically, if you see from the history, we are using many types of packaging material. Basically, it can be from earthen part, paper-based packaging material, glass, metal, and plastic containers. Earthen parts and all were initially they were developed in the prehistory period and all. They are used. Mainly they were used for storing the grains and all. And nowadays they are almost very remotely they are using only in African countries only they are using for storing grains and all. Most of the countries they have replaced other type of packaging material. Then paper is one of the safest safe packaging material. It can be either craft, bleached or greaseproof or parchment paper depending on the application. It is paper, you know that it is suitable for small scale as well as the retail market, bulk packing. Most of the sizes, it can be single serving also. It can be, if you see McDonald's or KFC, anything, even the Domino's and all, you can see most of them are using the paper based packaging material. Even it is a single retail pack, small scale, even the bulk pack like carton boxes and all, normally they are using. All kinds of food can be packed using paper, but we have, if you are planning to pack this paper with products with moisture content, then we need to give a one inner lining. That is the only requirement there. So one advantage of this paper based packaging materials is it can be used as many form. It can be used as a bags, pouches, wrapping boxes, cartons, tetra packs, folding cartons, like that many forms we can use. And their one advantage is they're very highly shock resistant. That means whenever you are transporting most of the good, including the glass bottles, they use this either 5 or 7 ply cotton boxes so that they will not be damaged, and they will have a very good rigidity due to the presence of cellulose fibers compared to other packaging material. And they are also, you know that they are also light in weight, cheap compared to other packaging material, and it is widely available and it can be manufactured from the locally available resources. One disadvantage with this is, as I was mentioning, it needs lamination for packing the foods with moisture content. That is one disadvantage. And then other one is it may damage during this transportation and all if the external protection is not provided. That is another disadvantage of the paper based packaging material. Then suppose if we are using virgin wood for making this packaging material, then it is not a problem, but we have to be careful for using the recycled and the one which is having a printed like newspaper and all, we should not be using. Further again, if the wood is preserved using some chemicals, then there is a risk of this chemical preservatives entering into this packaging material. Those things has to be taken care while considering this paper as a direct contact packaging material. Then glass is another very highly inert packaging material. It is, you all know that it is chemically inert. It will not react with any of the food constraints, and it is transparent and it can be made into any shapes and sizes. That is one of the, even different colored bottles, that is one of the more attractive in the glass packaging material. Other advantage with this is it is easily microwavable and it can be used for heating any kind of food products. But disadvantage with this glass packaging material is it is heavy and it is fragile. If it is we are living, if it drops from the certain height, it will easily break, and it is also costlier compared to other plastic container. And once it is breaking, it will have a disposable issues. That is another problem. Then metal cans, there are various types of metal cans are in use, like tin can, aluminum can, tin free steel can. These are all the packaging material which are commonly used for food packaging material. tin cans, if it's say tin can, it is not 100% tin. It is only 2% tin, which is packed, means which is coated in differentially from both the sides, and then really nearly 98% it is stainless steel only. So it can be used easily for the food package, means food packaging application. It will be using low carbon steel. It will have both the tin surfaces and both the surface. It is light in weight, and it is also very rigid and strong. And one advantage with this, it is very highly appealing in nature. You can see very golden colored, attractive containers, so that people will be getting attracted. So compared to any other metal cans, we get better shelf life in the tin cans, and it is easy to fabricate and low weight. Disadvantage is it cannot be used for acidic products. It has to be used for only meat, low acid food products only, and it is not flexible in shape compared to other metal cans like aluminum or tin free steel can. So India, we don't have any resource of this tin material. So I think the first speaker, they were mentioning about the thermal processed or canned shrimp products, which were very famous globally during 50s. We were having almost 40 to 45 canneries during that time, but we could not compete with the other neighboring countries, mainly because of the cost of this material, this tin. So we have we were searching for other alternative materials, and then I think aluminum, we have abundant resources, and we started developing the containers using this aluminum can. Normally this contains almost 99.5% of aluminum, and remaining certain impurities will be there, or some other compounds like magnesium or manganese will be introduced in the packaging material to provide the strength for this one. And this can be used in very different shapes. This aluminum containers can also be used as a bottle tops, closures, and then it can be used for beverages, and then for packing the fish also. Apart from this aluminum can, tin free steel can is another invention developed in this industry. Here what they do, they are using 100% steel. They are not giving any tin coating, and but they are giving a electroplating of steel with chrome material, like inner layer they will be electroplating with chromium. So this is similar to what we will be having this in tawas and all will be there, no, in our household. This one non-stick pans and all, non-stick vessels, that is similar to that one. So here advantage with this tin free steel can, it will prevent rusting and corrosion due to presence of this chromium. It can withstand very high internal pressure and suitable for low acid food also, and it can be outer surface can be used for attractive printing. But one disadvantage with this is it cannot be recycled or reused, and it is not suitable for soldering and welding also. So that is one of the disadvantage with the this tin free steel can. Then other than this one, flexible packaging material also widely used. It is basically petroleum based packaging material. They are all, you know, that they are very light in weight. They require very less storage space. It can be rolled, and very good quantity can be kept in very short space, and then it is easy to use, seal, and also it is easy to dispose. That is its disadvantage also. So if you see the flexible packaging material, there are 7 different classes of packaging material. This is the codes which is given for easy recognition for recycling purpose. So among this one, only the 3 packaging material, flexible packaging material like HDPE, LDPE, and PP are somewhat safe, and this can be used for direct food contact surface. Suppose you are packing any milk or any food products, if they are planning to use different layers, then the inner layer which comes in contact with the food can be either one of these three which are given in the green color. So all others are not very safe for food, means food contact application. PET, which is normally used for water bottle and soft drinks, which is also not suitable, but still for only for one time use it is allowed, and reuse is not allowed. Then depending on the category of food like fresh fish or dry fish, MAP, thermal process, these are the different packaging material which can be used. Because suppose if you are planning to use for frozen product, the packaging material, it has to withstand the frozen temperature. If you are only using the PP, then it will give a brittling in nature. It will not be suitable. So like that, if you are using for dried fish, you have to use either laminates, or if it is a bulk pack, then you have to use HDPE-01 gazetted packing. If it is a modified atmospheric packaging, it should have very good barrier properties. Normally, the laminates of nylon and surlene or PVC molded trays, or this polyester, polyethylene films, or even the EVOH, ethylene vinyl alcohol, is normally used. If it is thermal processed food product like ready to eat fish curry or fish in oil or brine medium, then metal can, retortable pouches, or HIPP trays, these are the packaging material that will be used. If it is a battered and breaded products, then normally with this battered and breaded product, we cannot normally we will not prefer pouches. It will be packed in thermoplastic trays, because if your consumer starts crushing, that product will lose its shape, and that's why better to pack in a thermoformed trays. Then pickles means they have to withstand the high acidity. That's why normally glass bottles is preferred. Otherwise, the laminates of this polyester and LDPE co-extruded films will be used. This is about the packaging materials. So depending on the packaging techniques, this packaging will be varying. Suppose if you are packing in normal air pack without modifying its atmosphere like vacuum packing, modified or active packaging, then we get a limited shelf life. Say example, it will be normally ranging from 5 to 15 days depending on the fat content of the fish. If it is a lean variety, then we can get up to 13 to 15 days shelf life. If it is a fatty fish like sardine or sear fish and all, hardly we get 7 to 8 days as in a under chilled iced condition. But to extend the shelf life, we can adopt this packaging technologies like vacuum packaging, modified atmospheric packaging, or active packaging. In vacuum packaging, what we do, we just remove the air present in the package, whereas in the modified atmospheric packaging, we flush desirable package, means gases like carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and oxygen. And in the active packaging, neither we are flushing or removing, we are just introducing certain sachet containing some chemicals that will remove oxygen or emit carbon dioxide. So that here you require a machine for vacuum packing or MAP, but in the active packaging you don't require any machines. It is cheap in nature. So the depending on the packaging material also, you can pack this oxygen sensitive food products. Suppose if you are using aluminum foil, you can see very low moisture, oxygen transmission rate and water transmission rate. If you are using this aluminum foil for packing, there will not be any spoilage for many days. But one problem with this, you cannot seal this aluminum foil. Sealing property is not there, so it has to be laminated with certain packaging material to get these properties. So normally when you go to market, if you just ask packaging material, they normally give LDP, because that is the cheapest packaging material, but it will have a very high oxygen barrier, means oxygen transmission rate. In a day, it can transmit 1.25 liters of oxygen from 1 meter square area packaging material. So we have to avoid using this kind of packaging material if it is a oxygen sensitive food. Combination of many of this packaging material like polyester, polyethylene film, that is also one of the ideal packaging material for many oxygen sensitive food products. So vacuum packaging, I was just telling, it just removing the oxygen or removing the complete air and creating a negative pressure. So the packaging material here we are using either ethylene vinyl alcohol or barriers, means laminates with aluminum foil, metallized films or nylon or PVDC material is used. In the case of sous vide, what we do, we pack and then heat it, means exposed to boiling water, and we are slowly heating for almost 6 hours to 12 hours to preserve most of its quality. Here also we have to use high barrier packaging material. In the modified atmospheric packaging, I was mentioning, we will be flushing this desirable gases depending on the product what we are using. Suppose we are using meat, normally they flush 30% carbon dioxide, 30% oxygen and 40% nitrogen. But in the case of fish, if it is a fatty fish, they don't flush oxygen, they flush only carbon dioxide and nitrogen. If it is a less fatty fish, then they will flush 30% oxygen, 40% carbon dioxide and 30% nitrogen. If it is a other products like vegetables, even banana and all, most of them will be nitrogen packed modified atmospheric packaging. So this is the gas
Excuse me,
composition
sir.
which I mentioned for the
Sir,
Yes.
sorry for the interruption. Can you please make it quick as we are running short of time?
Yeah, okay. And this is the shelf life what we get. I think nearly 3 times shelf life we get in the modified atmospheric packaging. And that active packaging I was mentioning, it does not require any machineries and all. It can be either scavenging type or releasing system. This is iron powder based scavenging system is a most commonly used active packaging system. It can find many applications including fish. And you can see the advantage. If it is only air pack, we can get a shelf life for a oil sardine just 7 to 8 days. But if you are using oxygen scavenger pack, you can get a shelf life of 13 to 15 days under iced condition. And this is the comparison for number of shelf life as well as the investment. Vacuum packaging, it requires minimum 4 lakh of investment. MAP almost 35 lakhs, but active packaging, it does not require much of the investment. And intelligent packaging, other than monitoring, it also informs the quality changes or pathogens or any leakage, time, temperature, abuse like that. So one among that one is the freshness indicator, which is having very good application in many of the food products. In CFT, we have developed one freshness indicator. We are just placing a filter paper with certain chemical compounds, and it will sense the freshness of the fish and it will give the color change. So consumer, without any testing, he can judge the quality of the fish. If it is yellow in color, it is fresh, and if it turns to almost purple, then it is a spoiled one. So like that, even films also we have developed, and this is about the biodegradable packaging material we have developed using different resources. And then using the seaweed also, we have developed and optimized packaging materials. Even the Maggi or any pasta sachet will come, no, masala sachet, that is all packaging material. But if you use this one for a sachet, this can be directly put in the boiling water along with the pasta or noodles, and it can be consumed. Regarding the labeling is one of the important aspect of packaging. So it provides information on the ingredient, on storage condition, and details about the manufacturing conditions. So food label, it displays information regarding most of this what I discussed. And these are the symbols normally used. It is safe to use, and this means it is packaging material is recyclable. And this numbering I was mentioning, depending on the packaging material, they have to mention this numbering system. Then these symbols are other certified to be composite, then suitable for vegetarians, and then any allergy if they contain, they have to use these symbols. Again, gluten free or keep the city clean like that. Then FSSA, you know that they have given guidelines for both the packaging as well as the labeling, and they have categorized Indian food varieties into many food categories, and fish and fishery products comes under the category 9, and they have I was mentioning they have given separate guidelines for packaging as well as the labeling. So generally they have to be in accordance with these regulations. If it is Indian standard is not available, they have to meet international standard. And then packaging material what we are using, it should be suitable for the type of product or type of process we are doing. It has to be able to withstand the all the process conditions. And then the sealing material has to be compatible with the product, and it should not be this container. Suppose tin containers we are using, it should not be reused. And then printing inks and all, it has to be comply with the IS 15495. Then printed surface, that should not come in direct contact with the food product, because printing will come in contact with that one. Then newspapers and all we should not be using for wrapping. And if it is a multi-layer packaging material, the food contact material, the material which comes in contact with the food will be should be food contact packaging material. And then they have provided the general requirement for most of this packaging material, like paper to plastic packaging material. And one of the major criteria is the migration. All the packaging material, plastic packaging material, the limit of certain ingredients should not be more than 60 ppm, 60 milligram per kg, or 60 milligram per decimeter square. That is the criteria. Apart from that, other elemental requirement is also FSSAI has given. And for fish and fish products, they have given all the guidelines for different packaging materials. And generally what they are telling is labeling, they have to use either English or Hindi in Devanagari script. And then content should be very clear, and you should not be making any false claim and all. So this is one example how normally the packaging, this labeling has to be given. So it gives a product name, it should be clearly telling, and it can give a pictorial representation, but it should not be misleading. If they are telling mango, walnut and royal jelly, you cannot put apple like that. So it should be compatible with the what we are claiming. Then it should give a nutritional labeling, and then it should give a per serving what is the energy we are getting. Then ingredient list it should give. And then if it is having a healthier claim or any claim, they have to give. Then halal for some cases. Then any allergens if they are containing, they have to give. Any warning if the product manufacturer wants to communicate, that should be there. Then where it is manufactured, then the what is the claim, health claim, it is low in fat or less in cholesterol, or even the manufacturer date or use by date. Then country of origin, if it is imported, clearly it has to be mentioned. And net weight also they have to give. So the same thing we are telling here also. So nutritional information they have to give for on the basis of a 2000 kilocalorie. And if they are claiming any health claim, like they should mention this saturated fatty acid and FUFA and all in grams. If they are claiming any no trans fatty acid or less trans fatty acid, they have to mention in gram. Again, if they are claiming anything on cholesterol, it should be mentioned in milligram. Then health claim, this trans fat free, like that, if they have to claim, means it should be less than 0.2 gram per serving, then only they can claim. Even the saturated fatty acid, if they are claiming, it should not exceed 0.1 gram per 100 gram. Then these are some of the exceptional cases where they don't require any nutritional information, like in the case of soluble tree, or even the hospitals and hotels, if they are serving for direct consumption, then even the pappad and all, they don't require any nutritional information. Then this is one of the important criteria. If it is non-veg, the symbol has to be a square with brown outline. If it is a vegetarian product, it should be circle in a square outline. So this area, how much area of this, both this triangle and circle and this square is provided here. and they should declare the complete address of the company, and then they have to invariably display this FSSAI logo and license number. And if they are claiming any fortification, they have to use this symbol. And if it is organic food, they can use this Jaivik Bharat symbol. Then they have to give all this quantity like net content and all, the best before or best before month and year, best before month of the packaging. This information they have to give. Otherwise, they have to give manufacturing date also they can give. Then what is the instructions for the product refrigerate after opening or immediate consumption, like that they have to give. Then declaration I was mentioning, they have to mention the any allergens if they are using. Then these are the mandatory. If they cannot simply write refined oil, they have to write refined sunflower oil like that. And then they have to mention this, crush the bottle after use, and not to be used for infants below 6 months. All these things they have to mandatorily use for certain products. Then the principal display panel also, they have given a criteria how much minimum height and length should be there. Even the font letter, those things also they have given a clear guidelines. Then declaration of food additives. If they are using food additives, they have to display like it contains permitted natural color or synthetic food color. Thank you. That is the last slide.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an informative session. We'll be now moving ahead with our next technical talk. We have with us Shri Vikas Talwarji, Deputy Director at Regulatory Compliance Division of FSSAI, New Delhi.
Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all of you. And I'm really grateful and thankful for giving me this opportunity. So I'll sharing a small PPT on licensing and registration. Yeah, just before beginning the topic of this licensing and registration, just a quick update for all the food business operators. As Dr. Mohan just discussed about this labeling regulations 2020, I just want to inform that FSSAI has just 2 days back deferred the enforcement of that regulation till 30th June 2022. It means that the FBOs have got sufficient time to switch over to the new packaging and labeling material, basically, and they don't need to seek any approvals, individual approvals for the use of the pre-printed packaging material, and they can continue to use till the 30th June of the next year. Now we'll begin our main topic, that is just one more input, and that the relevant extension order is available on the FSSAI website also. So I think all food business operators will find, including those in the fish industry, will find this extension quite useful in the present times, and they may avail this benefit. Now we'll be moving on to this licensing and registration for FSSAI. Just one short slide is that why FSSAI license and registration. Actually, it is the statutory and legal requirement to carry out any food business. One has to obtain the license from FSSAI as per section 31(1) and 2 of the Act. Basically, no person shall commence or carry on any food business except under a license. This is the requirement for the license, but there is a proviso also. Nothing contained in this subsection will apply to the patty food manufacturers, basically, who need to register with FSSAI only. That is, a patty food manufacturer does not require to obtain a license. He needs only registration certificate, but that is without prejudice to the availability of safe and wholesome food for human consumption or affecting the interest of the consumers. Means apart only the license requirement of license has been replaced with the registration certificate. Otherwise, all the relevant safety issues or the other packaging and labeling regulations all are equally applicable to even a registered food business operator. Now the next question arises is that who is a patty food manufacturer? The definition as per the regulations and is quite simple. As of now, a food business with an annual turnover not exceeding rupees 12 lakhs, and such a food business operator is eligible for FSSAI registration. So this we have further clarified also that this turnover will be reckoned only on the basis of the food related activities. Means if a food business operator engages in a number of businesses together from the same premises, then only the turnover which is being generated from the sale or purchase or whatever maybe from the food related activities, that only be reckoned as the annual turnover for this purpose. Now the next question is, what are the documents required for obtaining a registration? Obtaining a registration is quite simple. It requires only three basic documents, that is a photograph, then a government issued ID proof, and then a proof of address only. Fee is also very small. It is just 100 rupees for every year. As of now, this registration certificate can range from 1 year to 5 years, depending upon the choice of the applicant or the food business operator. Then, who is required to obtain FSSAI license? As I have told that, apart from those who fall under the category of the petty food manufacturers, rest all need a food license from FSSAI. The license is further classified into two broad categories, and that is state license and central license. It depends upon the basically production capacity. If the production capacity is up to 2 metric ton per day, then the FBO is eligible for the state license, and in case if it is more than 2 MT per day, then the FBO has to obtain a central license. This is the fee and validity requirements. The fee is for the only key difference is between the state and central license is the fee. Since state license is presumed that the food business operator will be small one, relatively smaller one. The fee is only 3,000 till up to 1 MT per day production capacity, and then 5,000 for each year up to 1 to 2 MT per day. In case central license, the fee is 7,500 rupees for each year for all units having capacity more than 2 MT per day. Similarly, likewise registration, the validity of license is also ranges from 1 to 5 years as per the choice of the applicant. Two key clarifications I would like to bring here is that the name state license does not restrict the activity of the food business to the concerned state only. He can operate pan India with a state license. So it does not. It is not incumbent upon him that he should have a central license to operate in the various states. By having a state license with appropriate manufacturing kind of business or the retail or whatever category he is doing business, he can do trade across the country even with a state license. Then validity, we are concerned with the validity period also. So there is a proposal and the discussion are undergoing that to make the license, FSS license perpetual, subject to the submission of the annual return by the food business operators. So it is in all likelihood in future, you will not require to go for the renewal each and every year. You can simply obtain a license and so keep on submitting your annual return within due time every year. So your license will be valid for perpetuity. Then these are the basic documents which are required for the state of central license: blueprint, layout plan for the processing units, list details of director, partners, proprietor, equipments, machinery details, analysis report of water in case water is used as an ingredient or if it is coming in contact with the food. If it is not used in the production like in the oil industry, then the water analysis report is not required. Photo ID proof, proof of possession of premises, partnership deed, self-declaration, proprietor, memorandum and article of association towards the constitution of the firm or the company, copy of certificate obtained under Cooperative Act if it is a cooperative society or if it is a multi-state cooperative society, as the case may be. Form 9, nomination of the person. This form is very important because in case of companies, this form is obtained to ensure that the key person will be held responsible for the violations related to the FSSAI license, rules and regulations made thereunder. Then the recall plan in case of food safety emergency or if there is some health issue with the food, then the FBO should have a recall plan in place so that whenever any incident happens, he can promptly recall the implicated food products from the market so that the consumer interests are protected and any health related concern is saved from further escalation. Then the production unit photographs to ensure that the production area is having sufficient hygiene and is actually eligible for obtaining a license, and there is a no miscommunication or misunderstanding between the applicant and the licensing issuing authority. Then application process for FSI registration or state license, the entire process is end-to-end online, including the fee payment and the document submission. You need not go to anywhere for anything. You don't. You just go to this site. This is a postcode.fsci.gov.in and create a login account and apply online. This is a very interactive portal. You can move for FSCC license in a step-by-step manner, and the license, the application will be submitted quite conveniently. But apart from that, I would like to also send a line of caution here. There are many unscrupulous elements in the market, so don't fall in their trap like in consultants or in the fake websites. This is the only official website of FSSAI for obtaining a food license. Then renewal of the license of the registration, as the regulations stand right now, a food business operator gets a window of 180 days to apply for the renewal. Suppose his license is valid till 30th June. So 1st January of that year, he will have the window open for applying the renewal of the license of the registration. If an FBO does not apply for the renewal till the 30 days prior to the expiry of the license, every day 100 rupees penalty will be charged upon him, and that is the maximum penalty will be rupees 3,000. But in case his license, as of now, his license gets expired or registration gets expired, it cannot be renewed. He will have to apply for the fresh license, and in the intervening period, he is supposed to cease all the production activities. So all food business operators should keep this fact in mind, that they should obtain the timely renewal of the license. And as I already told, that it is the future plan to make this license or registration perpetual ones. In that case, annual return will have to be filed by each and every food business operator. Then do ensure that your annual return is also filed within the due time. Otherwise, your license or registration may go under suspension, and you will have to be debarred from carrying out production activities till the license or registration is reinstated. Then there are some key takeaways points for fish processing industry. We have standardized 25 fish and fish products, basically broadly standardized. There are a number of fish species which are mentioned in this regulation. The regulation number is 2.6.1, which is available on FSSAI website. The link I have pasted here also. And this is under FSSAI Food Product Standards Food Additives Regulation 2011. So FBO can simply go here and assess the food product standards. So all the standardized products he can manufacture under these regulations only. Now, when he goes for a license, obtaining a license or applying for a license, he has to choose the food product category. So this is basically the regulation governing the product standards related to the fish and fish products. Now, the licensing category is different. It is the food category 9. That is, all fish and fish products are licensed under the food category 9. So, he has to basically, while applying for a license, he has to choose this category, and he will have to, under this category, he will have to comply with the product standard mentioned under this regulation. And one thing related to standard that is slightly offbeat is that the license for fish sauce is granted under food category 12 with subcategory 12.6, because this is sauce and the category is of sauces and like products. So it can be seen that all the products are licensed, fish products are licensed under category 9, except only fish sauce, which is licensed under category 12. And food product standards may be accessed at 2.6.1 of FSSAI regulation food product standard, which is available at this link. Then the next is one, since all the fish and fish products are high risk category products, it is mandatory for the food business operators to get their premises audited by the third parties empaneled by FSSAI, but this is applicable only in case of the central licenses. So if we can correlate from the previous slides, the conclusion is that only FBOs who are having central licenses, that is whose production capacity is more than 2 metric ton per day, they will also have to get their premises audited by the third party auditors appointed by FSC, nominated by FSCCI. However, FSCCI, while later 2nd September 2021, has also exempted the fish and fishery processing units which are already inspected by the Export Council of India. This exemption is for this mandatory audit because this entails a course as well as other compliance burden. So in order to ease out and promote ease of doing business, since such premises or export houses
Excuse me,
basically
sir.
are already, yeah, please.
Sir, apologies for the interruption. Like we are running very short of time, so can you please
Just
make it
just
quick?
1 or 2 minutes. Just 1 or 2 minutes. I'm going to finish.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
So this is the exemption that we have granted, keeping in view that such premises are already exempted by the inspected by the Export Council of India. You can check this advisory available on this link also. Then another recurring issue is of the formalin issue. This issue has actually hampered or damaged the food industry a lot, especially in the export markets. Formaldehyde is not permitted to as a preservative or as a cleaner at all in the fish, because so this should be kept in mind that the use of formalin should be avoided. Now the another issues comes up is that formalin is naturally found also in the fish across the globe actually. So under regulation 2.6.2, we have set the maximum residue limits of the formalin in the fish, and this may be up to 4 ppm or 8 ppm or 100 ppm depending upon the fish, whether it's a freshwater, marine, or the fish product. Further, a guidance note has also been issued for all the stakeholders, including trader and consumers, regarding the issues of this formalin. Repeatedly, various high courts has reprimanded the industry that the formalin is basically a carcinogenic. So its presence in the fish is highly objectionable. So all food business operators should mind it and should carefully deal with this presence, its presence. So this is our FOSCO's website. This is our helpline number, and this is the email ID and an issue related to the license if that can be raised on this platform. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we'll be moving to our next technical talk, which is on detailed project report preparation on micro fish processing unit. For this session, we have with us Ms. Tonisha Dikshit, consultant PMU NIFTM, Thanjavur.
Welcome you all to the session on detailed project report on fish processing. So going quickly across the various components of the detailed project report, what is DPR is basically a fundamental document that is required by various financial institutions and agencies for understanding the credibility of a business. So for the same, these are the following pointers that should be outlined in that specific document, and it should be providing the specific clarity on what is the capital required for starting up or expanding the new business. So with respect to the fish processing, the fish and marine segment, for establishing or expanding a fish and marine product processing line, it is really a very attractive opportunity in the states in which the ODOP has been approved and specified. And these are the states which you can see, that is Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, Gujarat, Karnataka, Kerala, that are the top 5 states. And further, there are several other areas wherein you can have these units set up for processing the freshwater fishes or the other ones. So while preparing a certain DPR, there are certain assumptions that are required to be kept in mind before starting the calculation and the ultimate document. The assumptions involve understanding the maximum installed capacity, which is to be assumed at the rate of per annum. So that will be calculated as per like 300 days your unit will be operating. For sustainability, it should not be less than 300 days. And in a day, it should run minimum 8 to 10 hours per day. So for a new unit, you can assume that first year can be spent for construction or expansion, or you can start producing in the first year itself, depending on the status of your current project. Then parallelly, in the simultaneous years, the capacity can be calculated or assumed. So for example, it can start from 60, 70%, 80%. So you should definitely not be assuming 100% capacity starting from the first or second year. So like this, the assumptions are made depending on the product and the location and the region you are there, depending on the demand in there. So then average prices are required to be confirmed as per the market, that is the raw material prices and the sales prices. So these are a glimpse of the DPR components starting from a project at a glance that involve all these components, that is the name of the project, then proposed capacity and the assumed utilization in the following years, the raw materials required, the total project cost. So basically here you can see the total project cost involves land and development building cost. So it does not involve the land cost. It involves the development and building and minor civil construction work cost. Then machinery and equipment utilized, miscellaneous fixed assets, pre-operative and preliminary expenses. So pre-operative and preliminary expenses involve basic licensing initially, or what we can say registration costs, minor costs that are involved while registering a new business. All those costs can be added in the preliminary and pre-operative expenses. Then the working capital margin. So these all constitute the total project cost. These are the one-time costs that will be involved. The working capital will be the recurring one, and of that, a specific percentage like 25 to 30% is been added in the total project cost. So this is the slide is showing the project at a glance that is kept at the very starting of any DPR document. And here you will be mentioning the means of finance, how you are going, how you are proposing to be able to have all those finances for that project. So for PMFME scheme, the subsidy grant is available. Parallel, there will be working capital loan that you can apply, term loan will be there, and your contribution, how much it is. So that is there. Then debt equity ratio, that means what loan kind of a thing you have taken, and equity means your own contribution, how much it is. So that debt equity ratio you need to mention here. Then comes the profit after depreciation. So basic calculation and the profitability kind of thing. So average debt service coverage ratio. So DSCR is there, and then payback period. So this is what we call the project at a glance. That's the first one. Second is the market potential. You need to be clearly stating about the market, the demand, what are the various products, what are the various players, competitors, all these people in the market, and what is its potential. Like in the previous slide I told, there are various states which are very high in fish production. So you can mention here what is the key perspective of market potential in that is required to mention in the project report. Third comes the technical feasibility, which involves the flowchart, basic flowchart, and the requirement of that particular process. So the machines should not be too high of cost, or it should be accessible by the promoter. The product should not fail at any point in time if you are proposing an innovative product. So this involves the technical feasibility of it. Then comes the financial calculations. So these are the machines and equipments that you will be finalizing based on the quotations of the 2 or 3 different suppliers at regional level. And this will help you get an estimate of the total cost required for the machines and equipment. Then comes the working capital. So these are all the part of basis of the financial calculation. Then comes the working capital requirement, wherein you will be computing the recurring cost. In the total project cost, we were telling that part of it is assumed as calculated in the total project cost. So working capital requirement involves your recurring cost. Recurring means it is going to happen every month. Raw material you will require every month, packing material, finished goods, all these things will be required every month. The basis can be specified here. 7 days stock you are going to keep, 15 days stock you are going to keep, how much period it is going to stay with you. So that much amount will be blocked with you. So that will be calculated under the working capital requirement, and this will be then calculated for the number of years. So for the first year, if the working capital calculation is coming to some amount, so 30% of that will be considered under the project cost. Then comes the total financial feasibility. So here comes the profitability analysis. So you will be calculating all the expenses that will be required by you, raw material and all those things. The total expenses will be reduced from the total sales revenue. What is the total sales you are going to get? So this total sales will be based on the assumption of the demand and the capacity utilization and the your MRP that you have finalized. So the total sales revenue, that will be expenditure will be reduced from that, and you will be getting the profit before depreciation, interest and tax. The depreciation calculation will be there, and then after that the term loan and working capital loan interests will be reduced. So finally you will be able to get the profit after tax or profit after depreciation, interest and tax, what we call as PAT. So this is a basic profitability analysis that is required by the banker or the financial institution to understand the credibility of your business, the strength of your business, and how much sustainable it is, and when are you going to get the profits. This will definitely further tell you about the payback period, by how much time you will start getting the payback from your business. So the next analysis comes to break-even point analysis, wherein your business will start gaining the profit until unless, so for example, in this case, you can see the break-even point is 53% of the total sales. So when you will achieve 53% of the total revenue that you have estimated, you will start getting the profits until unless you will keep on repaying the amount that you have put in your business. So these are the various what we can say financial points or financial ratios that are required by the break-even point calculation. So these are there. So this is the total what we can say DPR components which involve all these, and then comes the overall project feasibility and implementation schedule. So these are the various components, and I hope you'll be able to prepare on your, and all these model DPRs are available on the website of our institute, so you can get across them and you can refer to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an informative session. May I now invite the Honorable Director of National Institute of Food Technology, Entrepreneurship and Management, NIFTM Thanjavur, Dr. C. Anand Ramakrishnan, sir, to deliver the concluding remarks, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. Just now I witnessed a good presentation by our colleague and other, apart from that, our SIFT colleagues, and thank you so much. And we well aware of that fish processing. We are the world number 2 in the cultivation and the production of the aquacultures and all the fish product, but we are the 4th exporters in the world, and it continues to grow. And if you wanted our fishermen and all the people who are involved in the whole ecosystem of the fish processing and the value addition, everybody will get benefited if you make the value addition of the fish. That's what today you would have been witnessed a number of presentations. And PMFME is the one of the classical example scheme can cater to micro medium enterprises, and in India is right now, if you food processing industry, if you look at it's growing at the rate of 10%, and that the market potential is going to be double from the $263 billion business to the $535 billion business. And fish, meat, fish and poultry has the good space to play the role in the whole food business ecosystems. And among all the industries in India, 90% of the industries are from the micro medium industry, and definitely this type of value addition to the fish will give a lot of impact on the total value chain. Fish, everything is the value added product, even bones and the whatever the it has come, the waste is generated, can be taken good amount of the protein. And if you look at egg protein is the quality protein once you think, and if you take that waste what is generated from the, even just you take that fish market waste, we can create a lot of value addition from that good amount of the protein. And the fat, what is that polyunsaturated fatty acids, so called omega-3 fatty acids. Even waste we can take that type of fat that can be used as a supplement. The protein can be used not only for the animal feed what traditionally we are using, we can purify that on that proteins, then we can use it as the human consumption as well. But we need to segregate such type of waste proper manner to utilize. So definitely whatever you got it, the insight from the today what we organized from jointly NIFTM Thanjavur as well as ICR SIFT Cochin, you would have been got some insight, and you want a further anything, the technological input or the guidance, anything, you can contact either IFPT or the NIFTM Thanjavur or the SIFT Cochin. Thank you so much. Be safe. Still, COVID is not over from us, so we have to be safe and eat fish, at least every day one fish. Who are eating the non-vegetarian, this is the wonderful meal, and it's a full meal. It has the uniqueness of the fish. People are still not understood, and definitely it's a good meal to have it. Maybe today lunch, have it on fish. Start from today, every day one fish. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, once again.